Welcome, everyone, to a March Madness chat. I'm Andy Katz, pleased to be joined by Dan Gavitt, Senior NCAA Vice President in charge of basketball. Dan, a lot of topics to get to you with here. Let's start with the NIT. Some changes from a year ago. It continues to evolve. The one thing that won't change is it will be held again in terms of its Final Four at Hinkle in Indianapolis on the campus of Butler. Let's go through some of the changes because there are some automatic berths for the ACC and the SEC. And let's explain why that is and where the rest of the field will come from.
Sure. Well, let's talk about the things that aren't changing. First, it's a 32-team field, the oldest postseason event in college basketball, and coming off of one of the most successful years that NIT's had in over a decade. We'll start the tournament on campus sites just a couple of days after Selection Sunday on ESPN networks, and looking forward, as you note, to having the championship game held again at Hinkle Fieldhouse at Butler University. The changes, and there are a lot of changes in the postseason space. There's a new event now in college basketball postseason for the men, and it's called the College Basketball Crown. There are some conferences that have partnered with the new event, the Big 12, the Big 10, the Big East. So a couple of their top teams that don't make the NCAA tournament will be going to that event, and many others. It's the 16-team field, we understand. So the NIT had to make some changes, to be competitive, to get the best available teams that don't make the NCAA championship. And as you note, that'll mean two exempt bids for the ACC and SEC, two best teams that don't make the NCAA championship. And then we'll take the 12 highest ranked conferences based on Ken Pomeroy's rankings and offer an exempt bid to each of those conferences, one team that doesn't make the NCAA championship field. So there's a total of 16 teams. They'll be our first round hosts. And then the rest of the field, of course, will be selected by the NIT committee, which will be chaired by Tim Duncan this year. Welcomes a couple new committee members, and Tubby Smith, Hall of Famer and national champion from Kentucky, and Jeff Jones from Old Dominion.
Well, two quick things. I just want to make sure people understand there certainly could be, and there likely will be, teams from the Big 10, the Big 12, the Big East in the NIT, just not the first two in those three conferences, because those will be going to that new event. And then the other thing is, if you win your conference regular season title, don't win your AQ in this year's NIT, there's a pretty good shot that you would get a bid, which is sort of what it used to be. Is that correct?
That's right. And to your point, the Big East, the Big 12, and the Big 10, we certainly are hopeful to have at least one team from their conferences in the field. Should they be ranked in the top 12, which traditionally those conferences have been, then they would get an exempt bid to the NIT. And we look forward to having those teams in the field as well. And we are excited to bring back, as you know, Andy, the opportunity for regular season conference champions who don't make the NCAA tournament field to be included as automatic qualifiers for the NIT. Now, the catch this year is you'll have to be ranked in the top 125 of all the metrics that are on the team sheet. There are 7 different metrics. An average of those metrics, 125 or better, would qualify a team automatically as for the NIT. And we'd invite them and welcome them at the conclusion of their regular season, even before their conference tournament starts. So they know that they would be playing in a postseason event should they not win the NCAA AQ.
And let's stay on that postseason track here. For those familiar in the space, March Madness, I always did my power 36, and the 36 number was based on 36 at-larges this season because the Pac-12 is no more in its old status. I mean, it'll be coming back here in 2 years. There are now 37 at-large berths, 31 AQs. So how do you think that'll play out for the selection committee?
That's right, Andy. For both the men's and women's championships, this year we'll have 31 automatic qualifying conferences, 37 at-large bids. It certainly increases the opportunities for for those teams that don't win their conference tournament to be in the field. And there's a lot of interest, as we know, in potentially expanding the NCAA championships. There's no decision on that now, nor is it imminent, but we'll get a little glimpse as to what maybe an extra team or two would look like in the field. And I know that those teams that are going to be on the bubble will be excited about that.
All right, Dan, let's go to the beginning of the season. We've already seen some high-profile charity games where you can be peer-to-peer. Fans can come, they can be broadcasted. They can also do a closed scrimmage. And we've still got more to come here before the beginning of the season. It's been great. I've covered them. What are your thoughts so far, how it's all worked out?
I think it's been very favorably received, Andy, by the players, the coaches, and fans. This was an opportunity to start just a couple of years ago. A waiver is needed for this opportunity to take place. It used to be one game, now it could be upwards of two. There has to be a fundraising component to it, so it has to benefit a charity, of course. And we've seen, as you said, a lot of great high-level matchups already. We've got some this weekend, I think, including Arkansas and Kansas and Arizona State Duke, among many others. I think it's an opportunity for higher-level competition as teams prepare for the start of the regular season. Division I opponents that might not play each other in the regular season or don't want to play each other can play without effort of loss or risk of loss, I guess. And then, of course, there's the component that's valuable of helping a worthy cause. And so I think the oversight committees may take a look at making these opportunities more permanent because I think it's been very positive for the game overall.
All right, so now about the games that count, the MTEs, the multiple team events. Blanket waiver was issued to allow teams that are from the same conferences to potentially play each other. And we're going to, with the expanded conferences, we're going to see it's going to be harder and harder for these multiple team events not to have two teams from the same conference. We already had seen previous waivers. For example, the Maui Invitational has Iowa State and Colorado, because Colorado now is in the Big 12. When they both signed up, they weren't. So these kinds of things sort of had to happen anyway for these events. But now we've seen where the Players of Era event in Las Vegas changed its championship day, and we potentially could see, an Oregon-Rutgers game, which is a Big Ten game, but as a non-conference game in Vegas, an Alabama A&M game, or even a Creighton-Alabama non-conference game, and then they're scheduled to play each other 2 weeks later. What are your thoughts on how that has changed sort of the landscape with MTEs?
Well, the multi-team event legislation and opportunity has served college basketball incredibly well for a number of years. It provides opportunities for teams at different levels to have high-level non-conference competition in November, December. It shines a bright light on college basketball when college football and the NFL are still very much in people's minds, and so the MTE space has been very, very positive. But it's also challenging. We're challenged more broadly right now in college athletics around legal challenges and antitrust, kind of restrictions, and it gets at everything. It's gotten at the highest level of the game in college athletics overall, and now it's potentially some risk around the MTEs as conferences have gotten larger, as upwards of 16 to 18 different schools. Having only one team per conference participate in these events can be seen to be restrictive and arbitrary. And even having teams participate in just one event every 4 years, same thing. Legal risk that may not be warranted for the NCAA. So while the MTEs have served the game very well, we're going to have to take a good, fresh look at it in the current legal environment we're in. That was what led to the blanket waiver for this year and this year only. The oversight committees are going to look at the NTE legislation overall, and by next June of 25, make a decision on what that looks like going forward. But it's most likely to be less restrictive and to open up opportunities that don't currently exist. We're hopeful that those events will continue to be really great for the players and teams and for the good of college basketball overall. But it will need to evolve as the game continues to evolve.
All right, a couple of the quick things I just want to throw at you here. First off, in terms of legislation, because we're on that track for a moment there, unified start date with the men and the women. What went into that, and what will that look like going forward beginning next year?
Yeah, up until this change, Andy, we had the season start on a Tuesday or a Monday, and it varied. It was based on the first or second Tuesday of November. But what the result of that is that the length of the season varied from time to time. between 21 weeks in length and 22 weeks in length. And why that's important is for the last 3 years, for example, we've had a 22-week season. For the next 4 seasons, starting next year, the season would have otherwise been 21 weeks, which creates an awful lot of compression to get all of these games in. And it just made more sense to the oversight committees to standardize the length of the season to 22 weeks, to base the 22 weeks back from the national championship games of men's and women's basketball, so that the length of the season is always the same. What that will result in next year is the season will start a little bit earlier. It'll start on the Monday, I think it's November the 5th, and it will be standard throughout the rest of the calendar, always being 22 weeks in length. And the committee's decided on a Monday start for both men's and women's basketball to create the greatest amount of flexibility to schedule. These should be local decisions made by campuses about who plays what night and how many games you get in that week. But it is, I think, a much better model that will create a standard date, a standard length of the season, and provide for great opportunities for both men's and women's programs to have the same experience.
And actually having the Monday versus the Tuesday every 4 years, with election day, I think that makes it easier too, because I think what we'll see is a lot of games on Monday this year on the 4th, probably almost none on the 5th, and then you pick it up again on the 6th. So you just sort of avoid the election day deal. News, USA Basketball has a couple of new members that are familiar to some names within college athletics to their board of directors. You are also on that board. Nina King highlighting the new members there from Duke. She's just done a tremendous job as the athletic director at Duke. What are your thoughts on some of the new people that are going to be on the board?
Yeah, excited. We have 4 different NCAA and college basketball representatives on the USA Basketball board. I'm fortunate enough to be one of them. As you know, Nina King is going to join as a new member for this quad, which means between now and the 2028 Olympics. Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the Southeastern Conference, is also a new board member, as is Lynn Holzman, our vice president for women's basketball at the NCAA. So it's a great group, both for men's basketball, women's basketball, AD, commissioner, NCAA senior staff. We also want to thank the incredible service of those whose terms just ended, that have represented college basketball so well, notably Chris Plonsky from Texas, who served on the board for a number of years incredibly well, Bernard Muir, the athletic director at Stanford, and Gloria Navarez, the Mountain West commissioner.
And look, we'd be remiss if we did not discuss Tony Bennett. I still would say what Tony did from 2018 to 2019 will go down as one of the greatest turnarounds in all of men's college basketball. The first ever number 1 seed to lose to a 16. He handled it with the utmost class. And then a year later, they win the national championship in 2019. He decided within the last couple of weeks to retire as a head coach at the University of Virginia. Just felt like he just didn't have it anymore in the current landscape for a number of different reasons. But he's won a national championship. He's done very well professionally. And won at all levels. No one could win at Washington State. He and his dad won over there. And then he gets a Virginia job, takes that to another level. A great player at Green Bay, pro with Charlotte. Just if you could put in perspective his coaching career, what it's meant to this game. And also, as you know, I don't think this is, anything negative on the game, because he's won at the highest level. Same with Jay Wright, wins national championships, and decides, I want to enjoy the rest of my life and not be so stressed. You can do that financially, professionally. He moves on. And I kind of feel like the same thing with Tony.
Well, first of all, heartfelt congratulations and a huge thank you to Tony Bennett, an incredible representative of college basketball, the game of basketball overall. We just talked about USA Basketball. He was a player for USA Basketball, coached USA Basketball. In my opinion, Tony will be in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame someday as a coach. 2019 national champion, incredible teacher of the game, incredible in developing young men. And he's even better a human being than he is a coach. His style of play was distinctive. It was incredibly effective and successful. In this generation, his era, he's as successful as any coach we've had in college basketball. And the grace and class with which he ran the program at Virginia, as you note, Andy, is incredibly powerful as well. Handling defeat with class and dignity, and also all of the victories. I think the winningest by percentage coach in Virginia basketball history, coming off an incredible career at Washington State. Couldn't be happier for Tony and his family. He certainly shared some of his perspective around the challenges of the game right now. There's no doubt that there are challenges. I think anybody of Tony's generation, myself included, who's a coach, an athletic director, or a conference commissioner who's had some success, has had moments of self-reflection where, is this what I want to continue to do? It's changed so much since I started in my current career, and change is inevitable. And it's also very hard right now because there's so much change, and there's so much lack of kind of boundaries and management of that change. But he's earned the opportunity to make that decision on his own terms. I credit him for that and congratulate him with the utmost respect, and we're going to miss him for the game. But I'm certain he'll continue to be involved at Virginia and the ACC and the game that he's loved and has meant so much to his life and his career.
And lastly, Dan, selection committee is going to meet next week, and the Final Four in 2025 is back in San Antonio. We've had great Final Fours in San Antonio. Little teaser to 2026, where we're going to be in Indy and have all three divisions, but more on that later. But 2025 in San Antonio. What are your thoughts on the lead up to that and the history that we've got with March Madness in San Antonio?
One of the most popular Final Four sites for sure, Andy, as you know, incredibly historic championship games and Final Four games have been played there. The community is thrilled to have it back. The last time it was there was in 2018. The Riverwalk is welcoming everybody back to the Alamo Dome, and it's going to be another great experience, and looking forward to ending the season there, even though we're just a little over a week away from starting the season. The Women's Championship will be held in Tampa for a record fourth time at the Women's Final Four. And so we're looking forward to April, but can't wait for all the games that will take place between November and April to get us there.
Can't wait, Dan. Appreciate it. Thank you.